Well, good morning, Pete, North Las Vegas. Today we're going to install an A2 rear sight into our brand new Harrington and Richardson A2 upper receiver. But before we do that, let's do a quick parts check. I'm going to show you that this Fulton Armory kit, I had really good luck with my Colt H-bar clone build. Did a bunch of videos on that build if you're interested. But just to show you the fitment between the H&R and the Fulton Armory, a lot of times on your receivers you'll get a lot of twisting slop in here. And you can see on this receiver and this Fulton Armory rear sight, it is a very, very snug fit. There is very little to no back and forth twisting. So this part here is a very, very good fit. Happy about that. We're going to be using the Marine Corps manual. With one exception, it's pretty good for installing this. One of the notes here is, sorry about the camera work, is down here in this paragraph here, they talk about sometimes, especially on a used rifle, the free length of these springs one can get shorter and one can get longer. And when you're reassembling this with springs they're supposed to be the same size, but let's just say one is slightly longer than the other, they recommend that you use the longer spring down here and that you use the shorter spring up here. So that's one interesting note out of the Marine Corps manual. Okay, so before we get going here, I just want to say there's a few different ways that people set their A2 rear sights up. There's the standard Army 25 meter 300, where you index all this stuff the way it's supposed to be, the way all the calibrations, detents, and adjustments are designed. But there's the Marine Corps came up with a 36 yard zero. So you're going to set your indexing drum up a little bit different for that. And then there's the Santos Improved Battle Zero, where you set your indexing up for that. Then there's the revised Improved Battle Zero. And these are some notes from my old Colt H-bar build that I recently did. But like I said, we're going to be setting this up for the standard Army 25 meter 300 zeroing. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is put these two halves together. And then this indexing set screw right there is going to thread in the top here. This is 1/16. So we will take this, put it on top, and get that set screw started in there. Okay, so we got our set screw. Indexing pin set screw, and like I said, that fits on top of the bottom of the indexing ring. So now what we're going to do is slide this into the receiver after we get our spring and detent ball installed. If you want to use a little grease in here, fine. Maybe oil might be better if you're going into combat. Grease is going to attract dirt and grit and sand, and maybe just a light coating of oil works out better, but I put mine together with a little bit of grease. Okay, so we got one of the springs in there with the detent ball sitting on the top. Next thing we're going to do is slide this in. You could probably get it slid in without using any tools, but I kind of like to stick a punch in here just to kind of depress the ball and help it get over the edge right as I first slide it in. So we'll do that off camera. YouTube's kind of weird. Okay, we're in there. Next thing we're going to do is get our other spring and our other detent ball and use a little bit of grease. And then we'll slide this into the receiver. Okay, so this one's ready to go. We got our other spring and detent ball right here. Put a little bit of grease on the threads. Like I said, this is kind of a preference thing, whether you want to use oil or grease or however you want to put this together. I mean, I just prefer a little bit of grease on mine. I'm using white lithium. Interesting fact, a lot of people recommend Aeroshell for barrel nuts and all that other kind of stuff. Aeroshell is lithium based, so there's that. Okay, so we got it started. Got our detent ball on the receiver here. Just engage the threads and spin it all the way down until it bottoms out. So what you want to do is bottom this thing out to the first full detent. You don't want to force this thing into the next detent. So if you're like stuck halfway between a detent when this thing bottoms out, just back it off to the next closest detent. Okay, so this next part I'm going to do the hard way. They do sell a tool for this that you can slide in the back of your receiver here, and it will compress the spring into the sight housing. And then it makes it a lot easier to get this pin in because you don't have to worry about holding the spring down. The tool does that for you. But that pin goes through here and captures the top of the spring in a compressed position. So we'll get this spring inside the pocket there. And I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna do it the hard way, which is the Marine Corps way. And they just show using a screwdriver to compress the spring to get your pin in. And that's how I did it on the first build. I'm not planning on doing another A2 build anytime soon. Fulton Armory has a tool that's reasonably priced. I think it was around 15 bucks. Don't have any experience with it. Couldn't find any videos of anybody using it, but it looks like it should work just fine. But like I said, I'm going to do it the hard way. I'm going to do it off camera because of YouTube. But before you put your pin in, make sure that your pin, focus, whatever. All right, so you can see on the pin here, it has a chamfered edge. And sometimes you'll get pins where one end is chamfered and the other end is not chamfered. And I don't think that's intentional. I just think that's sometimes how they come. So check both ends of your pin to make sure they're chamfered before you go pounding it in. Get in there. All right. Okay, so like I said, this next part here, I'm going to do off camera, but the way I got it in last time fairly easy was I would knock the pin in and get it to where it would just kind of butt up against the spring. Sorry about the camera work. To where it would just get up against the spring, and then with a screwdriver, compress it just enough and just tap it over the edge of the spring. And I didn't have too much trouble doing that. But like I said, I'm going to do this part off camera because the YouTube's BS. Okay, so I taped up my screwdriver to hold that spring down just to minimize the chances of uglifying my new receiver. And then once I get the spring down below the pin, we'll tap the pin in. All right, let's get her done. Okay, so I raised the rear side up. I have the pin in far enough to where it just catches the edge of the slot on the thread portion here. And then I went back up a couple of clicks just to make sure that we got enough clearance. So there's a couple of clicks. So now this pin will go through the slot on the rear sight. And that allows the spring to sit up a little further into the rear sight, so I don't have to compress it as much, if that makes sense. Okay, so you can see where the pin has just now come over the top of the spring in there. And I'm just double checking that, I didn't inadvertently shove the pin in between coils of the spring, but we're sitting over the very top of the spring, so we're good. So we'll just tap it in the rest of the way and get the pin flush. And then our last step will be showing how to index this, and then we'll be done. Okay, and it's probably a good idea to use the correct roll pin punch. You can see the little tip on this that helps keep your punch located on the inside this hole here. And so that's where we're going to be. Now you can see my punch is a little bit bigger than the pin here, so once we get close to the receiver, I'll switch over to a standard punch and just be really careful. Or blue painter's tape. Okay, mission accomplished. We are in. No shiny metal, no scratches, no dings. See both sides evenly spaced. We'll crank this thing down, loosen that set screw, and get this thing indexed for the standard 25 meter, 300 yard zero. Okay, so there's our set screw. Now what you're going to notice is as you swing this around, getting ready to index it, that 8-3 notch places the set screw in that hole. So now we're going to back the set screw out, bottom this thing out to the closest detent, and then we'll go back and tighten up that set screw. Okay, so I have the set screw loosened up enough to where I've disengaged the top of the thumb wheel adjuster from the bottom. So now I can rotate this, which will bring this down. We'll keep the 8-3 here, and then we'll come back in and snug up that set screw. Okay, so I can't do all this on camera, but all I'm doing is turning that bottom one, and that's going to bring this down, leaving the top one where it's at. Okay, so I have this all adjusted to the nearest detent with my sight being bottomed out on the receiver. My 8-3's lined up, and my set screw, I just need to snug that up, and it's lined up with one of the holes on the detents on the bottom thumb wheel. So all we have left to do is snug this thing up, and we're done. Okay, so no dents, no scratches, no dings, no shiny metal. If you see shiny metal, it was already there before I put this sight in. So we did it the Marine Corps way. Instead of using a tool, we used a a screwdriver. So it can be done with no drama. That's a little bit of grease in there. Okay, so once again, a really nice fit between the Fulton Armory A2 and the Harrington and Richardson. There's very little side-to-side movement. That's a very snug fit. All right, well, Pete, North Las Vegas, over and out.